It's time, gamers. We've got the news. The patch has arrived. We've got a lot of nerfs. A lot of nerfs going about the place. Some of the highest DPS builds out there. A new best way to gear up in the game by far in World vs. World. So that's some good news. And they also fixed a bunch of bugs. So very exciting stuff. Well, let's get into the balance stuff straight away because, let's be honest, that's what everyone wants to hear. First up, all the overpowered relics, they're getting nerfed. You know, people didn't believe me about this one. Check this out. People did not believe me. I said, oh, Relic of Mabon, it's really, really strong, but it's confirmed to be bugged. And people replied in the YouTube comments, and they said, no, it's working as intended. Well, I was right, because a developer told me, and I don't understand why people doubted that. But anyway, here we go. What's happened here is that the relic no longer improves the might that you apply to allies. So in other words, what was going on here is that you would run this on healers and essentially give your allies a massive DPS increase by making their might even stronger than it already is. That doesn't work anymore. The bad news is this relic is trash. Now, unlucky. And then Relic of Akeem and Relic of Fireworks also got nerfed. Basically, these two things just big power creep with Secrets of the Obscure, Relic of Akeem for condition builds, Relic of Fireworks for power builds. This brings them much more in line with their competition relics, essentially. Like, Relic of Akeem in particular was just massively overperforming. That's why it got nerfed pretty damn hard with this one. So, yeah, it's helping. And combined with some of the other changes to these other builds, it's going to take the power level of a lot of these DPS builds down a fair bit. So I think this is a good change. Like, you don't want Akeem to be just complete trash. You want it to be balanced compared to the other relics. Like, having one relic massively overperform is no good. Relic of Fireworks is actually an interesting one. Because, of course, Thief Relic is the competition to this one. It essentially says you get 5% damage all the time, as long as you're using loads of skills. This is going to be 7% sometimes with Relic of Fireworks. So, for this to actually be good, you're really going to want to have a build that can get good uptime of this. So it's going to be pretty close between the two things. I believe that is intentional, though. They probably want a relic to, you know, give you similar value across the board. We still need a relic for Bladesworn, by the way, so stay tuned. Probably have to wait to the next patch for that one, but I think some good changes overall. Like, these relics, they were definitely power creeping the game in a maybe not super healthy way. So it's good to see some changes there as well, I think, with those relics. So now we actually get into the meat of this. Basically, Elementalist was totally broken with Weapon Mastery. Everyone can use Sword Warhorn on every single spec. This not only gave Elementalist massive damage output, but also, of course, incredible utility with Warhorn in the offhand, giving boon extension, some good healing output, and some just boon application in general with the Fire 4 skill. Completely broken, has now been nerfed. Okay, no matter what, do not let Ellie mains trick you, okay? This is definitely deserved. This build was exceptionally overpowered. A lot of records created that will be very hard to break by utilizing Catalyst and Weaver. So they have now been taken down a notch. That's how it goes. Wildfire damage down, Elements of Rage, and Weaver's Prowess. This is the condition damage trait. This is the power damage trait, basically, on Elements of Rage. You get precision. Also gives you all damage. So basically, damage goes down significantly on Weaver. And of course, the same thing on Catalyst, empowering auras. Less damage per stack. That's like a damage mod on Catalyst. And deploy Jade Sphere. This is just the Jade Sphere, right, on your Catalyst. Does less damage now. It's still going to be very strong. Like, these nerfs are not, like, mega, to be honest. Like, they're definitely significant. Obviously, you can get a good amount of stacks of this. But make no mistake, this is still going to be an excellent choice. And I definitely expect to see Weaver and Catalyst continue to perform pretty damn well in a lot of kind of, like, PvE instance content. So, it's all good. No problem. Engineer. Condi Hollow essentially getting nerfed here. And again, this is a build that you don't see that often, but it is incredibly powerful. It does a huge amount of damage. And again, a lot of the builds that are being targeted in this patch, it's taking the builds that do insane damage down more towards the 40k range. Like, that's what's happening. This patch is taking the 49k, 48k, and nudging it down closer to 40. And this actually is a pretty... This is a pretty useful patch, in my opinion, for understanding what ArenaNet wants. We can infer from a lot of these changes that they want builds to be kind of topping out at just above 40k. Because that's what they're being pulled back to. They're still over 40k, but they're being pulled back to that kind of number, essentially. Like, seriously, people always say, "Oh yeah, ArenaNet love Guardians." How does Virtuoso get away with this? They can't keep getting away with it. Look at this nerf. Half a second less on Jagged Mind. Now, to be fair, that is actually very significant because a lot of the damage on this build, it's that weird build, right? You need your crit chance. You want to have really high crit chance to activate all of the extra bleeds from Jagged Mind. So, to be fair, this is... this is significant. It's going to take the build down a little bit, but it's still very, very powerful, right? It's Conde Virtuoso is still an excellent build. Arguably even better now that you run Chaos a fair bit actually on this build, because now you basically boon yourself really hard consistently, which is pretty wild, to be perfectly honest with you, because you have stability all the time and stuff. So it's still going to be a monstrous build. Very, very powerful indeed. Enjoy. Okay, but yeah, again, it was already doing about the kind of damage that they wanted, just taking it down a little bit. I would argue that it should be nerfed a bit more because it's Mesmer, so it has amazing utility, and also it's unbelievably durable, having that distortion on it and some lifesteal with this Jagged Mind trait as well. So I'd say it's still very, very strong, but hey, you know what? Listen, okay, Mesmers, you're having a good time here. But yeah, the NG stuff is fine as well. It just does less damage. The build is still good. Scourge. This is the big one, of course. This is the big one. So Scourge got hit hard. Big duration nerfs across the board for both the powered full DPS build and also the Alacrity Scourge build. Now, that's fine. They're both very overpowered, ridiculously overpowered, so I think this is completely acceptable. I do want ArenaNet to be a little bit careful with actually keeping the power level of offensive supports high. I actually think that there's a bit of an issue, and has been for a long time, of Alacrity damage builds not being that much fun to play, a little bit lower in power level compared to quickness DPS builds. And I think that the game is way healthier when you have offensive supports really, really strong. I think it takes pressure off the healer, so you have more healer diversity. I think it makes people want to play the role more because it's fun. And the way Guild Wars 2 works is that supports are the backbone of groups. And I think supports being fun and powerful and really enjoyable to play is actually good. At this stage in the game, I don't mind offensive support, so stuff like Quickness Herald, Alack Spectre, Alack Mechanist, right, Alack Tempest, etc. You know what I'm talking about. Quickness Firebrand, all this kind of stuff. I don't mind builds like that actually being a little bit busted in a way, because I think it just makes the game more fun to play, and it kind of greases the wheels when it comes to group creation. So going on a slight tangent here, but I think I do want to see offensive supports remain pretty strong. We saw this with Herald, right? Herald, very notably, is very, very broken, but it kind of makes the game fun to play at the same time. And I think it really eases group composition. It means that a lot of builds get enabled. Like, if you have a really strong support to pair your healer with, it makes stuff like Heal Spectre and Heal Scourge and a variety of the kind of slightly off-meta, slightly wonky healers actually work out really well. Which I think is good for the game overall. But anyway, slight tangent. This is fine. If you see any Scourge players crying about this, ignore them. They're wrong. Very, very, very broken build, to be honest. One of the most broken builds in the history of Guild Wars 2, 49k DPS Scourge. It's a hair under 40k. That does put it on the lower end of DPS builds, which, by the way, is exactly where Scourge should be, because bear in mind, Scourge still has full ranged, great AoE damage, Signet of Undeath for reviving, boon removal, solid utility, some good potential for crowd control if you need it with Golem and Spectral Grasp and that kind of stuff, right? It's just very good, and the Aegis as well on the Snake at this point. Like, Scourge is still going to be, honestly, one of the best options to take as a DPS build for your, your pugging raids, pugging strike missions, like open world meta events, all that kind of stuff. It's still going to be one of the top picks just because of the baseline kit that Scourge brings to the table. It's just a good build, and it has lost, I think, like 10k damage, which is a pretty big nerf, right? But it's still very, very powerful. I don't think this is going to be a bad build whatsoever, to be honest. Overall, the one thing is here that I guess I would complain about, I'm not a huge fan of traits behaving differently on elite specializations. It's a duration change, not a mechanical change, so I won't whine too much about it. But in general, I think that it's better when things are as consistent as possible across elite specializations from a new player perspective. I think it can be a little bit confusing if your trait operates differently depending on what you're playing. That seems a little bit weird to me. Overall. Some pretty brutal nerfs, by the way. Look at that, 3 seconds to 1 second. Looks like we're playing PvP right now. Yes, this is saying this trait was actually busted, so not a surprise that that's gone. What's actually kind of interesting about this is because the DPS traits are getting nerfed, in some ways, the DPS and the Alak build are going to squidge together a little bit, which in terms of their damage output, which is kind of interesting to kind of think about, which is something to be careful of course, right? Like, you want to make sure that the DPS builds stay pretty differentiated. Demonic lore is still unbelievably strong. Unbelievably strong, so that's not exactly happening anytime soon, but definitely something to watch out for. I think especially with Weaponmaster Training, it's really important that ArenaNet differentiate builds and kind of make them have trade-offs and have specialization. Otherwise, you end up with a really big mush, which is no good to anyone involved. Harbinger also got nerfed as well. A little bit of damage output. Yeah, I mean, that's fine. Like, again, all the builds that just pump, this build was doing crazy DPS, it's just gone down. Fair enough, right? Nothing wrong with that. Soul Beast. Bit of damage nerf to Power Soul Beast. Honestly, surprisingly getting away pretty lightly. This build is honestly fantastic. It's extremely powerful right now, but just gets a little bit of a damage reduction on Furious Strength. This means you get more damage while you have Fury, so that is now gone. It's gone, guys. It is gone. I mean, it's still there, but it's just not as good. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, this build is still very good. Either the axe build, the sword build, still very, very powerful. It's just, it's honestly one of the bread and butter DPS builds, right, across the board. Then Neurotoxin Burst. This is actually a Condi Untamed nerf. Just, you know, content. I'm not really sure. This is not a build I'm familiar with, to be honest. I'm not sure if this was, like, really broken. Maybe it was. Maybe the devs know saying we didn't. But there you go. You've been nerfed. Enjoy. Enjoy! Now we move on to Revenant. This is definitely one of the more anticipated nerfs, I think. And the way they've gone about this is a little bit interesting. This is weird. So they nerfed Greatsword, and they buffed Vindicator to compensate for this, right? Because if you nerf Greatsword, you nerf Vindy as well, and you also nerf Renegade. So they gave Vindicator a fair bit more damage back. Quite a lot of damage, actually. Leviathan Strength, 10 to 15%. That's when you don't have full endurance, and you get a 25% damage mod on your dodge. So pretty significant, actually, which I think overall might even work out in favor, potentially, of Vindicator, which is fair enough, because honestly, that is definitely one of the power builds that could use a bit of a nudge, so pretty good if you ask me. Now, what's weird about this? What's the issue here? Well, the issue is that the way they've done this, and we kind of saw this a little bit across the board, I think, is that they nerfed the weapons instead of nerfing individual specializations. This is an interesting approach because, of course, this essentially nerfs all builds at the same time, which, again, to reduce the power level, that does make sense. But, for example, this nerfs Power Herald as well, the DPS Herald build. Now, what we might see in the future is they say, okay, well, we nerf Power Herald, but we're going to give it some power back on its Grandmaster trait. And I think this is a type of approach that we are going to see a lot of. We need to see a lot from ArenaNet, is that the traits that decide what your build does need to be very powerful. So in other words, if you have a trait and one gives you quickness and one gives you damage, they kind of need to make those traits very, very impactful. They must use elite specialization traits to balance this. And that is something a little bit notably absent in some of these changes. So I think ArenaNet need to be careful with this because otherwise they are going to essentially have casualties of war. And a casualty of war here is essentially Power DPS Herald, which actually was a pretty damn good build now, and it's not going to be like, you know, complete trash, obviously, after this change, but I would have liked to see some kind of compensation there to kind of keep that build where it was, because not a lot of people played that, to be honest. It wasn't like, you know, mega busted or anything like that, but I think there needs to be some tactical approaches here with how this is done. And yeah, nerfing the weapons may not always be the way to go. I do think weapons need to become a lot more specialized. Like, this is definitely a big issue that a weapon like Greatsword has for Revenant, is that, well, now you have Sword, and you have Greatsword, and these two weapon sets are kind of competing for the same role, if that makes any sense. And hopefully when we get the next major balance switch, we will see some weapon differentiation. In my opinion, the issue with something like, again, Greatsword on Rev or Warhorn on Elementalist is that they are always best at everything. The Ellie problem is that Warhorn is best for damage and best for support at the same time. Sword is best for all damage on Elementalist, so you always play Sword or Warhorn on every single build. And that's where you run into issues with Weaponmaster Training. The weapons need to specialize more so that you go, oh, I'm playing this type of build, so I'm going to take this weapon. I'm playing this type of build, so I take this weapon. Instead of being, well, this weapon is best at literally everything, so I'm always going to take this. And I think this is something that we kind of see it here a little bit with Rev. We need to see strong identities in these weapons so that you choose them depending on what build you play, as opposed to, well, this is the overpowered weapon, so I'm going to pick this weapon on every single build. Or this weapon is always the best for any build I want, so I'm going to run this. So looking at individual weapon specializations and also making traits very impactful. I think this is, in a way, that I really have some potential for some really exciting traits, because I think that to make weapon mastery work, I think especially stuff like Grandmaster traits, even though that's cosmetic, right? Like, it doesn't matter where the trait is at this point because of the way the trait system works, but that's not the point. What I mean is that I think those traits need to be really impactful. They need to be big, right? Like, when you pick that trait, it's like, yeah, this is a different build. I am playing a different build now. And that can synergize with the weapon mastery system. In order to make these choices meaningful and to make them so you actually have a choice as well. So I think that needs to happen. Oh yeah, I guess, look, I'll throw this in there, otherwise, you know, I'm going to get roasted. Scourge Torch is kind of an issue here as well for this, right? It's like amazing for damage, and it also has like good support on it as well. Like that kind of like mushiness you have to be a little bit careful with, I think, given that you can now use all these weapons everywhere. Casualty of War here is also Renegade. Overall, specifically Power Renegade didn't get a compensation like Vindicator did, so unlucky. You hate to see that. And this is just Condition Renegade in general, and this is kind of like all of the Conley Rev builds, just getting toned down here a little bit as well. I mean, Renegade was pumping, so like nudging, this is kind of, it's pretty significant actually. Like 7-shot is having a 33% reduction in its torment duration. That's a bit of an oof, to be perfectly honest with you. I wonder how much damage this build does now. That's a bit ouch. But yeah, auto attack and Greatsword 2 getting nerfed. Guys, spoiler, Quickness Herald still going to be amazing. Because again, similar to Scourge, what made this build good is the fact that it's got prot, it's got swiftness, it's got might, loads, it's still got like, it still does like 20 might, okay? It was like 20 might, seriously, it's absolutely bloody ridiculous on this build. Perma, quickness, and 6 raids. This build is god tier. If you look at my tier lists, Quickness Herald has not moved. It is god tier. Very much so, in my opinion. And again, like I said in my previous segment, I don't really view that as the end of the world. Like, this build being like super, super strong is not that bad. I'd just like to see all of the other supports also kind of be competitive. The issue with Rev is not that it's really, really strong. The issue is that it outperforms a lot of the other supports, right? If they were all about the same, then honestly, it wouldn't be the end of the universe. That's basically it for Rev. Elemental Blast. They also, you know, nerfed Condi Herald as well. Unlucky, I guess. Unlucky. But yeah, Renegade was pumping very hard, especially the Alacrity build. People are saying it was like 37k. So yeah, that's like very strong, man. So yeah, that getting nerfed is fine. But again, I do think that there's definitely a lot of room for giving higher boon access to these builds. Because again, the elephant in the room here is that other support builds like Harbinger and Renegade, and they do a lot of damage, but they don't have the boon access that Herald has. And the Guild Wars 2 meta is entirely oriented around boons. So I would like to see that improved across other supports. I know that sounds very power creepy, but guys, like, come on, like, the genie's out the bottle, we're through the looking glass. Like, how do you want any more, you know, analogies or metaphors, right? Come on. Like, we're in Clown Town now. We have Weaponmaster. We might as well kind of embrace it and kind of go with it to make the game fun to play. Anyway, Thief. You thought Thieves would get away with not getting nerfed? Well, yeah, to be fair, kind of had this coming. Thief, in particular, Spectre, was absolutely blasting with this patch and getting nerfed pretty significantly, actually. Twilight combo. Poison and Torment duration from 8 to 5. Ouchie. And Strength of Shadows, Torment duration goes down, or Torment damage bonus, rather, goes from 25 to 20%. in PvE only. So basically the goal of this is to hit the Alacrity Spectre build and the regular DPS Spectre build and kind of take it down to where it's supposed to be, which again is kind of they want it to be around that 40k number approximately. I would argue that Spectre actually kind of deserves to be a little bit higher because it actually has some very notable weaknesses. It doesn't have cleave in particular, doesn't do that very well, and it also has it has to deal with poisons for single target stuff. So yeah, they could probably give it a little bit more there. The Alac build, I think, in particular, is still very, very strong, right? Again, I think ArenaNet should be careful not to over-nerf it to make it bad, but, yeah. There was also that meme Deadeye build that did a lot of DPS, but a bit impractical, to be honest. I didn't really perceive that Deadeye build to be much of a threat to the game, right? 2 people played that, and all of them played it on the Golem, so it's it's whatever. That is whatever. But, yeah. So, Spectre, it's still good, by the way. It still has some relatively robust boon access on the Alacrity build, of course. Does good damage, has great CC. It's just a really useful thing. This is it's high value. That's how I'd always describe Thief, is high value. It's just one of those builds that can be very valuable and generate, it can carry your team, basically, if played by a good player in the right situation. So, don't worry about it, Thief mains. You're in business. Okay, you're still all right. And while we're here, actually, I kind of want to mention this. You might be going, man, this is a big nerf. But it's really important to consider these nerfs in context. Bear in mind, everything's getting nerfed. Most of the really busted stuff is getting nerfed here all at the same time. So a very notable thing to compare would be, well, Thief's big competitor for the condition damage Alacrity DPS spot was Scourge. And Scourge honestly got nerfed harder than Spectre did here. This is pretty brutal. So bear in mind is that you shouldn't view this as, oh, my main is getting nerfed. It's everyone's getting nerfed. The power level of the game is reducing. So it's really important to look at these in context when we're considering a lot of these changes, right? There you go. Next, Warrior. I love this. I've had a bunch of Warrior mains complaining to me that Warrior has never been good. They're completely wrong, of course. Warrior is actually one of the historically strongest classes in the game, in all game modes, by the way. Just a fact there. It's actually historically true. There's no arguing that. But it does turn out that Warrior was actually kind of pumping, notably Condition Warrior. There's actually a really fun benchmark. I'm actually really sad that this doesn't get leaned into more, but there's a really cool trait on Condi Berserker, King of Fires, that basically says you can get a fire aura and detonate it, right, whenever you get it. So if someone feeds you fire auras, your damage goes up really high. I actually love synergies like that. It was 50k DPS, obviously completely unrealistic. You would never do that. I think it's really cool that it existed, though. But anyway, this build was actually hitting very, very hard, and these nerfs are pretty brutal, to be honest. I mean, oof, ouch. Fan of Fire, this is Longbow 2, important skill, obviously. Duration, nearly halved. Flaming Fury, Sword, Berserk, Primal Burst, nearly halved. Scorched Earth, one of the most iconic Condi Berserker abilities. Duration, nearly halved. Fixed a bug on Torch 5 that just got some random extra burning as well. That's going to be a DPS loss. Ouch. Pretty brutal, to be honest. I think, weirdly enough, some of this is almost targeted at the quickness build to take the damage down on that, and I almost feel like the damage build is a bit of a casualty of war here. Maybe I'm insane, but I almost struggle to see the Condi Berserker build doing particularly good damage after some of its kind of pretty important skills get walloped pretty hard here. There is the compensation here for the full damage build, so Blood Reaction. This competes with Heat the Soul for the quickness trait. That's the quickness trait, so you get higher power to condition damage conversion, 10 to 15% in PvE, so you have power, right, because you have Viper gear, so that gets funneled into more condition damage, so you do get a compensation there, which is fine. But bear in mind, this was already like a full all-out glass cannon support build and DPS build, kind of. I guess it had some reasonable CC and such, but this is pretty harsh. Maybe I'm not seeing it here. Maybe this is definitely nice, right? Getting raw condition damage is always good, but it's pretty harsh, I feel like. Yeah, and again, the thing is with, like, a lot of these builds, this build has a pretty big playability issue. You just have a random 5-second internal cooldown on your quickness trait, which is kind of annoying, to be honest. And Berserker in general is relatively intricate with maintaining your Berserk. And it didn't really do anything else outside of doing damage and giving exactly quickness and fury. It's one of those builds that I actually think needs to be fleshed out a little bit more. And I'm definitely hoping that we do see a lot of offensive supports, stuff like the Warrior build, stuff like Harbinger, stuff like Untamed, right? All this kind of stuff. Like, all these builds, and well, obviously, Alak Mirage, right? Like, a lot of these offensive supports that are somewhat a little bit weird, not exactly seeing a lot of play rate. I'd really like to see them kind of juiced up and given a lot more exciting abilities and boon access to kind of compete with Herald. Like, I almost view Herald and Spectre as kind of the standard, right? Like, you know, your Condi Alak Spectre and Herald. Those are like the shining examples, right? Of like what a glorious offensive support can be. Kind of mech as well with Power Alak mech. That's the glorious example. It would be nice to see some things kind of taken to that level. What you'll notice here, by the way, is that no changes for Guardian, guys. Guardian escaped completely, which, if you think about it, is a big win. It makes builds like Condi Firebrand relatively better, seeing as they didn't really get touched, especially seeing as that was a Relic of the Fractal build, not a Relic of the Keem, so it doesn't actually care about this. So going for that is going to be really, really juicy, right? Guardian mains, rejoice, my friends. Although, to be fair, Guardian, you know, it's not like Dragon Hunter and Willbender were like Giga OP, right? You know what I mean? It's like, it's whatever. So it's not really the end of the world, in my opinion, to not see any changes. I think the bigger thing that is a bit unfortunate is that changes didn't go through for PvP. For example, Relic of Akeem is very problematic in PvP in World versus World. Didn't really get addressed here. Berserker in particular, like, unbelievably strong in PvP in the duelist position. So it will be nice to see that, but it looks like they're kind of saving up for like a big balance patch. And to be fair, ArenaNet did say that this patch was going to be a PvE patch aimed at kind of getting the broken stuff like back down a little bit. So it's not completely out there as well. Oh, I completely forgot about the undocumented ranger change. That is true, yeah. Condi Druid got nerfed a little bit. Yeah, Blood Moon, which is the adept trait that basically says whenever you, like, immob or land a disable, you get bleeding, right? That got nerfed nearly 50%. To be fair, that build was also benchmarking very, very high. And it's still going to be very strong. I believe it's still over, still about 40k DPS. So don't worry about that. But anyway, irrelevant. Back to what I was saying. Would have been nice to see some PvP and World versus World stuff. Didn't happen. We're going to have to wait for the patch. I think, look, it would be remiss of me to not criticize ArenaNet for this. I do think that this skills update cycle has been a bit unfortunate. I think the expansion dropped, and there have been a lot of pretty serious issues in the game, balance-wise, that I would really have liked them to address sooner. To be honest, because it's important, right? Like, the way skills are is important, and it would have been nice to get something like this sooner, especially in PvP and World versus World. Notably PvP, I think, because that's where, like, you can definitely really feel it with that. So I've got to roast them a little bit for that overall. You know, I gotta give them a little bit of trouble with that one. But yeah. Overall, I think pretty solid patch, actually. You know, reduces the power creep. Everything is still good. Doesn't just completely dumpster any particular build. Could argue that Warrior's got a little bit of a short end of the stick here, especially seeing as Warrior didn't benefit that much from Secrets of the Obscure. Because Weaponmaster Training didn't do that much for Warrior. A lot of the weapons don't really go on other specs, because Warrior is quite brittle. It doesn't really have the same flexibility in terms of what type of build you have compared to other things. Like, notably doesn't have a heal spec, right? Waiting for that staff coming up later. So, like, Warrior, for basically the first time in the history of Guild Wars 2, getting a bit of a short end of the stick. I just got to emphasize that for the Warrior mains in the audience. But yeah, there you have it. Not a bad patch, if you ask me. I think people were expecting more, but listen, big mistake. ArenaNet said it was going to be basically a adjustment patch to some of the really overpowered stuff. You should have expected that. If you didn't expect that, then you can't read. Okay, good news. We also got a couple of bug fixes. So Sunquar Peak, Shadow Observatory, and Silent Surf all had pretty serious bugs that were either blocking progress or essentially breaking the encounters. They are fixed. However, I have got to be a little bit annoying here and comment on how they did it. So the way this is the bug, basically. NPCs that do an emote, if you attack them while they're doing that, it kind of messes with the AI. And what was happening is the boss would simply break and not do anything. This caused Eyekeeper of the Peak in Phase 1 to do nothing. It caused Artstariv to just break on her intermission phases at 66% and 33%, and it caused weird stuff to happen on Silent Surf as well, basically semi-breaking the fight. Now, the way they fixed this is by rejiggling the way the abilities work and also just making Eyekeeper of the Peak invulnerable at the start. Now, I hate to be that guy, but they didn't actually fix the bug here, as far as I can tell. They've prevented you from being able to trigger the bug. And there is an important distinction there, by the way, because what that means is that it could very easily happen again, and I believe it actually happens with open world mobs as well. Like, certain mobs that do this can actually have their AI broken as well in some other context in the open world. So, like, look, I'm gonna say, honestly, great job for fixing this, because it really sucks that this was broken. You know, it's just not nice to have, like, broken content in the game, right? So fixing it is good, but they actually made Artstariv a fair bit easier, by the way, by changing the way her ability sequencing works. You don't have nearly as much of an overlap on some of her one-shot abilities now, so that's kind of an interesting side effect. And I don't think all of these issues are actually gone. They're probably still lurking about the place and could maybe rear their ugly head again. So you have got to watch out for that, in my opinion. On some better news, though, actually, this is amazing. This is crazy. World vs. World, a new merchant. This guy now sells equipment with exotic equipment with any stat you want, for gold and badges of honor. It's very cheap. We're talking like 40 to 80 badges of honor and 1 gold. Less than 1 gold for the cheaper pieces like gloves and boots and stuff to get any stat you want. World vs. World is now by far the easiest, fastest, cheapest way to get any build. That's it. It's not even close. I honestly, this seems overpowered to me. It is broken. It is insane. Like, crafted gear gets obliterated by this. Like, crafted gear is garbage compared to doing this. It is insane. I mean, you have to play World vs. World to get badges of honor, of course. But I honestly can't believe they even did this. It's so efficient and so strong towards the player, especially with all the new vaults. If there's new vault objectives coming in, they're just throwing stuff at you right now. The amount of rewards you get in this game is crazy. It really is. This is amazing. I actually think this is really cool. You can get everything except the backpack here, which you could just have to buy on the trading post, I guess, after that. But yeah, God tier. Love to see it. You can go talk to this guy. He's basically where all the vendors are on the Borderlands. Like, there's a big cluster of vendors. That's where they are. There's also World vs. World Rush Week, too. So get in there and get some extra XP, all that kind of good stuff. The rewards in World vs. World are so strong. Seriously, they're so strong right now. It's always been that game mode that people think isn't rewarding. Hell no. Especially with the reward check change. Now, if you get high pips, you're getting into, like, Platinum, Mithril, Diamond, you get so much reward track so fast. Gifted Battle is so fast, seriously, right now with the way they changed. They moved potions out of dailies into the pip system. It's insane. World vs. World is actually super rewarding currently, in my opinion. Really good. So, hey, it's a good time to check it out if you haven't tried the game mode and maybe you're looking to gear up some characters. Or maybe you want to get a new character for World vs. World, or you're just new to the game in general. World vs. World, a really, really good place to start, especially with that Rush event going on at the same time. Big fan of that. And also, no excuses anymore. People always said, oh, they made it core stats in the Wizard's Vault, because anyone can use the Wizard's Vault. Ooh, that's why they did it. No excuse. This is now stat selectable gear for anyone in the game, because World vs. World is core. And I have been told that you can't select stats if you don't have the expansion for those stats. That was from Roy, actually, so you can blame Roy for that. Yeah, that's right. Blame Roy. It's his fault. No, I'm kidding. But they could obviously apply that same system instead of giving you, like, an individual chest that you have to select, like Wop Wop, right, from the vault. Fix it. Get it done. Okay? Make that happen. No excuses anymore. We love to see that. And then, kind of at the end of this, a bunch of other bug fixes. And actually, check this one out. I didn't even know ArenaNet knew about this. Fix an issue that could cause a mismatch between the priority strike rotation and related achievements in the Eye of the North. Yeah, what would happen is that the priority strike would not be the priority strike in the achievements. That's it. Weird. Very, very weird. but that's how it goes. I don't really... And they also fixed the meta bug on Kaineng Blackout meta. I'm not gonna lie. Look, you guys are probably laughing at me, saying, wow, who cares about this? But you know what? Actually, no. I'm really glad that they're finding the time to fix some of these bugs. Would I like to see them do this more? Yes, but this is behavior that we should be praising. This is development that we should actually be really happy about. I love the fact that they're actually going back and fixing very serious bugs that have been in the game for a long time. I want to see more of this. There are plenty of bugged meta events. The Doppelganger is a really good example. It's just completely broken. Has been for a very long time now. Hell, even the Desolation meta event has been broken since the release of Path of Fire, right? Yeah, good. Fix it. Go back and fix it. Fix the old strike missions. Fix Whisper of Jawmag. Yes, do it. Fix it. This is really good. And I want to see more of this, 100%. So I'm glad that they're fixing this stuff. But this has always been a weird bug. It bothered me a lot on the Zero Day Hero, actually. I can't believe I'm actually just surprised they even knew about this. Yeah, there's a bunch of new achievements for rift hunting, all that kind of stuff. Go get your gold. It's like big gold for rift hunting, guys. Wow. Absolutely insane. Get in there. Do it. Or don't, I guess. It's entirely up to you. Incredible. I think that's about it for the roundup of this entire patch, I think. I think a reasonable patch. I think it does what it was intended to do. I think it'll be very interesting to see the warm-up and how we're going to go into the actual balance patch, the next quarterly balance update, which we don't know when that's coming, but I imagine that will be, you know, not too far away at this stage, but solid overall, in my opinion. Obviously, nerfs, you know, we don't get to be mega busts anymore, but ultimately, I think we can all agree that it's better for the health of the game that you don't have completely broken, like 50k DPS builds. We probably don't want that, right? And I don't think they actually went too hard on anything, except maybe like Warrior didn't exactly have this one coming, but not all the way. It definitely was a bit overtuned, but yeah, maybe they got bopped a little bit too hard, but we'll see. We'll see how the numbers kind of shake out there as well. And some really good quality of life for new players in World versus World overall. So big fan of that. And new things in the Vault too. They're actually really going crazy on this. If you just take a look, there's like another 1.3k Astral Acclaim you can get here. Like the Vault is so overpowered actually. Like it's crazy. It's unbelievably effective though, because even though players are getting rewarded a lot more, you'll notice that the prices of stuff has gone up. And that's because people are engaging with the economy. I think the Vault is incredibly successful at generating players who want to make legendaries, and that's like sucking loads of materials out. I think people are really using the starter kit here. They're really using all of these things to gear up their character and progress their accounts, and it's kind of getting the juices flowing, right, like of the economy. And that's why they're able to be more generous, right? They're able to be more generous because there's more movement, like players are engaging in the economy more, and that's why they're able to just go crazy and do stuff like basically free stat selectable gear in World versus World and just give you like 1 million Astral Acclaim. So it kind of is actually a good sign, in my opinion, for the health of the game, right? Like, that's the way I see it anyway. Pretty good stuff. Pretty damn good stuff. And as you guys know, I'm definitely a big bug fix enjoyer overall. But yeah, that's the patch. That is the patch. Hope you enjoyed my analysis video on this. Let me know what you think of the patch. And stay tuned for more. And maybe we'll do a tea time about this. Maybe you should subscribe so you can see that tea time. What do you gotta do? You gotta hit the notification bell so you can't escape me, and YouTube will spam you on my behalf so there's no escape from my content. Honestly, that sounds like a dream to me, okay? Like, do it. That's you. The Flames of War. This is gonna be you, right? Just screaming, surrounded by YouTube videos for the end of time. So definitely get on that as well. Anyway, that's gonna about do it. Follow, subscribe, watch the stream. Come back and watch every single day. And I'll see you next time, gamers. I'm out of here.